The Center for Parliamentary Studies, Training and Studies, was mooted and regulated within the context of the Parliamentary Service Commission Act. The purpose of setting up the CPST was predicated on the understanding that Parliament spends quite a large sum of money on training of its staff, its members of Parliament, and all other people who work with it. In the process, the CPST has grown. It is now on its highway to become a full-fledged institution with a linkage to one of our top universities, the University of Nairobi, where we have an existing memorandum of understanding.
After every election cycle, the leaders that join the county assemblies or the National Assembly are drawn from different backgrounds. No one comes here with the knowledge on how to be an effective representative, whether a member of parliament, a senator, or a member of the county assembly. And therefore, it's very critical that before even they embark on their roles as people mandated to oversight governments, they're equipped fully to undertake that mandate.
CPST has had profound impact on members of parliament in the National Assembly and our staff. The training that CPST has offered over the years and the collaboration with other institutions has enabled the members of National Assembly to be more responsive to undertake their duties of oversight and representation better. It has made our work easier as clerk and staff of the National Assembly with respect to capacity building.
Now, when we talk about CPST and the impact that it has had on the Senate, between the CPST and the Senate, we form a formidable partnership for being able to support the counties and their governments in their training needs. But more than that, CPST also has trained and continues to train and build the capacity of our staffers. And we are looking at CPST being the premier legislative training organization globally.
I must say that CPST is our key institution of parliament. We work very closely. The Parliamentary Joint Services works with the CPST in ensuring that the staff that are identified that work with CPST to develop programs, curricula, and training opportunities to serve members of parliament who are then after that able to undertake their mandate. But most importantly is the synergies that we have built across the institution, and more specifically from joint services to give CPST the necessary support that is needed, including projects development. For example, the project that is going on at the new CPST, want to call it new CPST, is being developed under the guidance of my office, and I'm happy that it's progressing very well.
As to our mission, again, it captures or follows with our mandate, is to enhance capacity development for effective and efficient functioning of Parliament, other legislative assemblies, and other stakeholders. That institution is going to be the center of excellence for real, for Africa and beyond. People will come to Kenya. There will be people coming to Kenya to learn. We are going to have a depository of knowledge. We are introducing our fellowship program. It's awaiting to be considered by the board. That fellowship will bring in academics, postdoctorals, postgraduates, people who have done a master's. They come here, spend 2 years, enhance their research in parliamentary and democracy, and these will be deposited within the CPST. This will be the place where former members of parliament will be gathering at what we are calling the former members of parliament in a kind of social club. Why? Because they need a place they can share their knowledge.
Mon Parlement,
My planet.
My Parliament,
My planet.
Notre devenir.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to some of our participants joining us where they're ahead of time, those behind us. I want to thank each one of you for joining us on this first webinar conference that we are running in collaboration with the Interparliamentary Union. I'm really pleased to welcome all of you on behalf of the Parliamentary Service Commission and the CPST. May I recognize our moderator for the session, the Clerk of the Senate and Secretary to the Parliamentary Service Commission, Mr. Jeremiah Nyegenye, CBS. I would like to welcome Honorable John Kerry, MP, Dagoretti South Constituency. I would like to welcome Mr. Andres Lomps, Community Engagement Specialist, joining us from the Victorian Parliament, and for taking your time off your sleeping time to join us for this. Welcome. I want to also welcome Ms. Karine Jabre, who is going to be joining us, I think, through video. And I want to welcome Mr. Dr. Mohamed Amali, Senior Research Fellow from Nigerian Legislative Institute. And I want to welcome you all distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to mention, as we had in the video, the CPST is established under the Parliamentary Service Act, and it derives its mandate really from the mandate of the Commission, which for the purposes of this webinar, the Commission, as per Article 127 of the Kenyan Constitution, is mandated to provide singly or jointly with other relevant organizations programs to promote the ideals of parliamentary democracy. This is one of those activities that the Commission supports, because then we're able to promote the ideals of parliamentary democracy. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going into the heart of democracy, which is public participation. As you've seen in the video from IPU, Kenya itself joined IPU in the year 1997, and our members are actively sit on various IPU committees. In fact, one of the discussants, Honorable John Kerry, is a member of one of the committees of IPU. In terms of our work with IPU, which we work through the Senate, we continue to do a lot of work. In 2018, we participated in what the gender audit, which continues to show our commitment on promoting gender-sensitive parliaments, and we thank the IPU for their continued push on gender-sensitive and inclusive parliaments. Notably also last year, the IPU and ourselves have been involved in the issues of principles of engagement supporting to parliaments, and we were involved in 2 events last year, and we are really glad that today we mark the first webinar conference run jointly with this prestigious institution of whom we are members. On behalf of the CPST and the Commission, please allow me to welcome you here, and in a very special way, welcome our moderator. Let me introduce our moderator to you participants so that you know who is going to manage us for the next 1.5 hours. Mr. Jeremiah Nyegenye, CBS, is the Clerk of the Senate of Kenya and is the Secretary of the Parliamentary Service Commission, a position he has held since October 11, 2012. The gentleman you see on the screen now is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and is a certified public secretary, and is a member of several professional bodies, including the Law Society of Kenya and the Institute of Public Secretaries. Mr. Nyegenye holds a Bachelor of Laws and Masters of Laws from the University of Nairobi, and he also holds a diploma from Kenya School of Law. He's an alumnus of Blavantic School of Government in University of Oxford, where he completed an executive public leaders program in 2019. Mr. Nyegenye is specialized in legislative drafting, and he was certified at the University of London in the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, and he has played a critical role in Kenya's constitutional reforms as part of the team that drafted the proposed then constitution in 2005 that became a full constitution in 2010. Initially, before he became the clerk, was the director of legal services and really established a very vibrant National Assembly's legal office from the year 2007. He also served before joining Parliament, the Attorney General's office. He's also worked as a private practitioner and also as a law lecturer. The law lecturer bit, I actually did not know. Now I know we are colleagues in academics, Mr. Nyegenye. He has served as a patron of the Africa Colloquium on Legal Counsel, which promotes legislative development across Africa. Here, listening to that profile, none other than him would be better to moderate such an important part in our constitution on public participation. And without further ado, may I welcome Mr. Nyegenye, our today's moderator, who will take over from now until the end, when I'll finalize with a vote of thanks. Mr. Nyegenye, the floor is yours. Karibu.
Thank you very much, Professor Nyokabi Kamau, for that very kind introduction. And may I say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And welcome, I'd like to welcome everyone who is joining us in this webinar. Let me take the opportunity first to thank very much the CPST and the IPU for putting together, organizing this webinar on a very important subject, the subject of public participation. And I'm very privileged to have been invited to serve as a moderator for this webinar. Let me say a word or two about the topic of our discussion today. Public participation cannot really be, the importance of this cannot be gainsaid. It is a central pillar of governance and of democracy. It's a recognition that democracy is not merely about elections, and that in between the elections, the public does not cede their sovereignty or their right to participate and wait until another election cycle. So this is about promoting parliamentary democracy. It is about promoting good governance. It's about accountability. But let me not go ahead of myself. We have illustrious speakers who are going to speak and whom I am going to shortly introduce. I will also say a little about how we propose to run this. We will have the main presentation by our main presenter, whom I will shortly introduce. Thereafter, we will have two discussants, whom I will invite also to make their interventions. And after which, we will have the presenter and the discussants answer any questions from the participants. So we are going to have public participation in the course of this webinar. So it's not a lecture. We are going to have to participate. And I would like to invite all our participants, when the presenters are making and the discussants are making their presentations, please feel free to text in, to write your questions in the Q&A section, and we will then put these questions to the presenter and to the moderator. Let me begin then by introducing our main presenter, whom we are very privileged to have today. Mr. Andres Lomp is our main presenter. You just put up your hand so they know who it is. Mr. Andres Lomp is a community engagement manager at the Victorian Parliament. And over the past 4 decades, Andres has worked at the Australian Federal Parliament, as well as the Parliament of Victoria, in community engagement roles. He has also undertaken a range of projects for the IPU and the UNDP in various countries. Andres was one of the lead authors for the Global Parliamentary Report on public engagement in the work of Parliament. So we are very privileged today to have this as our keynote speaker. I am reminded that I should have introduced Karine Jabre. Miss Karine Jabre, is she on board at this point? Ms. Karine Jabre, the Director, Division of Programs, IPU. This webinar is being mounted as a collaboration between CPST and IPU. So it is fitting that we recognize Ms. Karine Jabre, Director, Division of Programs, IPU. Just say hello.
It's a video presentation, so I'll start playing it.
Honourable Members of Parliament, Mr. Clark, Madam Executive Director, fellow panelists. I am delighted to address you today for this webinar co-hosted by the Inter-Parliamentary Union and the Centre for Parliamentary Studies and Training in the Parliament of Kenya on the topic of public participation in Parliament and its impact on parliamentary democracy, strengthening legislation for enhanced governance. This is the first joint webinar between the IPU and CPST, and I am particularly happy to see this partnership getting off the ground and for IPU to be working more closely with the Community of Parliamentary Training Institutes, or PTIs. The IPU believes that PTIs are key partners in the shared goal of strengthening parliaments. They facilitate continuous learning for both parliamentarians and their staff. They help integrate leading experts and research institutions, and importantly, they promote the skills required for parliamentary democracy to flourish. This is especially critical today in a context of democratic backsliding around the world. As the World Organization of National Parliaments, the IPU also engages in similar work, but on a global level. We facilitate learning and capacity building for MPs and parliamentary staff, as well as collaborate with international partners. It is therefore only natural to join forces and build stronger bridges between the IPU and the PTI community so we can all better learn from each other and share knowledge and good practice, all in the mission of better serving MPs and staff. And so I am particularly pleased to see advancement towards this deeper engagement. The topic that brings us together today, public participation in Parliament, has been a priority for the IPU for many years. In 2022, the IPU and UNDP published the third Global Parliamentary Report on public engagement in the work of Parliament. This report provides a detailed look at why public engagement matters and how parliaments around the world are reaching out to the communities they represent. It identifies trends and sets out a roadmap for parliaments to become more participatory, inclusive, and responsive. I am delighted that Mr. Andres Lomp, one of the lead authors of this report, will join us today as the keynote speaker. This meeting also occurs within the framework of the IPU's Public Engagement Hub work, organized by the IPU Center for Innovation in Parliament and the International Parliament Engagement Network. This hub brings together MPs, staff, and experts to share experiences through webinars and other platforms. If you are interested in public engagement, I strongly encourage you to visit the IPU website, where you can find recordings for over 20 webinars exploring various aspects of public participation, ranging from the role of artificial intelligence to youth engagement. In conclusion, I once again thank CPST and the Parliament of Kenya for this opportunity to partner with the IPU for this webinar, which I'm sure will be very informative and productive. I look forward to continued collaboration between us toward our shared goal of strengthening parliaments and the work of PTIs around the globe. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Karine Jabre, Director Division of Programs at IPU. So it's my singular honor and pleasure now to invite our main presenter. The main presenter is going to have 15 minutes to make his presentation. That will, with 2 minutes left before the end of that time, I will alert the presenter. Thereafter, we will go to the discussants. Please, this is to remind our participants to put in your questions in the Q&A section, and this will be addressed at the end. The floor is yours now. Andres Lomp, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be joining you for this webinar, and thank you for inviting me to speak about public participation in Parliament. It's a topic that's getting a lot of attention lately as people in various countries explore ways to strengthen democracy in the face of threats to it. Just last week in one of the local newspapers where I live, there was a headline that stated, "Our democracy is not working as it should. Here are some good ideas to fix it." The article went on to recommend that parliaments should pursue deeper engagement with the community. Well, that's a very similar message to the one that was delivered by the IPU and UNDP Global Parliamentary Report on public engagement in the work of Parliament. That report states, declining trust in public institutions means that parliaments cannot simply continue business as usual. It challenges parliaments to assess the progress they have made and step up their efforts at engagement. Reversing the trend of disenchantment requires concerted action going forward. An important theme of the report is that parliaments need to take their community engagement to the next level. It emphasises that engagement is not optional, but rather an essential part of the work that parliamentarians and parliamentary administrations undertake. More and deeper engagement will enable parliaments to benefit from the variety of views and expertise available in their communities, the report states. This, in turn, will help parliaments deliver more informed legislative and policy outcomes that meet the aspirations of their communities and the challenges of a rapidly changing world. There are, of course, many benefits that public engagement can bring to parliaments. These include helping to avoid a disconnect between elected representatives and the public they serve, showing the community it is being listened to and heard, countering rising public distrust and negativity, and most importantly, supporting Parliament's main functions by giving access to the breadth and depth of information and ideas that are needed for representation, lawmaking, public policy formulation, and oversight that meets people's expectations and aspirations. It's important to recognise that public engagement has many dimensions, and they include educating, informing, consulting, communicating, and involving. The Global Report provides much guidance for parliaments big and small, including a series of recommendations focusing on being strategic, inclusive, participatory, innovative, and responsive. For parliaments to achieve deeper, more meaningful, and mutually beneficial connections with the community, they need to be less static and more interactive in their engagement. This means moving beyond just informing the community about its processes and work. Instead, the focus needs to shift to more boldly involving the community in that work. It is a simple but powerful truth that people care about the issues that affect them, the Global Parliamentary Report points out. Engaging with people on issues that matter to them can help parliaments remain relevant to the communities they represent. Due to the political nature of many issues, parliamentary administrations traditionally have been cautious about highlighting specific topics through their engagement, concerned that the apolitical nature of their staff might be compromised if they are seen to be pursuing agendas. The focus has tended to be on promoting the processes through which people can engage and leaving the discussion of issues to the elected representatives. Issues-based engagement, however, is likely to be more impactful, as people tend to take an interest in issues rather than procedures. By actively considering ways to better engage people with the issues that the community is interested in, parliaments can encourage public participation in their work. It is better for a parliament to be seen as a forum for ideas and dialogue rather than as a place of political machinations and mayhem. So let's now consider some of the underlying principles for effective public engagement by parliaments. Those principles include mapping out a strategy for public engagement that articulates what a parliament is aiming to achieve, how it will undertake its engagement, and who its target audiences are. Setting clear objectives for engagement that identify the priorities that will be pursued. Embedding a culture of engagement within the parliament, with members of parliament and parliament's senior management team working together to effect change in the engagement approach and processes of parliament. Investing in the skills needed for effective engagement, either through employing professionals with the required skills or upskilling both MPs and staff. Encouraging community participation by considering where and how they can be reached, what information they need, what channels can be used to seek their views, whether they can be involved in deciding the outcome of the process, and how those outcomes are communicated back to them. Using a variety of channels and opportunities to engage with the community. Ensuring that engagement is inclusive of different community sectors. Pursuing opportunities for collaboration with the community. Mapping out an action or implementation plan. And finally, evaluating the outcomes that have been achieved to ensure that desired objectives are being met. One of the terms that is used in the global report that I really like is community-activated pathways to participation. That's where community members are provided with opportunities to help set the agenda for debates held in Parliament, the research that is undertaken, the issues that are investigated by Parliament's committees, and where the public is able to initiate direct discussions with MPs on issues that are of most concern to them. Let's explore some of this in a bit more detail to consider how public participation could be enhanced in relation to Parliament's legislative function. Traditionally, legislation is presented to Parliament for consideration, and the debate that occurs is undertaken just by MPs within varying timeframes depending on the nature of the legislation. Does the public get much of a say in those debates? Sometimes, if MPs seek community views individually through their own consultative processes, or if a bill is referred to a parliamentary committee for investigation. But I would suggest that community input is fairly limited on most occasions, or at least restricted to an invite-only approach. Can parliaments do better? Some have been trying. The Global Parliamentary Report provides examples of legislatures in South America, in countries such as Brazil and Argentina, that have been using innovative online platforms, enabling the community to comment on and make proposals in relation to legislation. One of the fundamental requirements for effective engagement is for people to be well informed. In relation to legislation, as a minimum, bills introduced into Parliament need to be made publicly available, for example, through the Parliamentary website, and should include explanatory information outlining the purpose of the bill. But is that enough to actively engage the community with the laws that Parliament is debating? If that's all that is done, then it puts the onus on the public to regularly visit the website to see what bills are before Parliament and to wade through technical information on the bill. To enhance public engagement, Parliaments can take a more proactive approach through various means that could include having an alert service via email or text message to which community members can subscribe to get alerts on new legislation brought into Parliament. Social media posting about new bills introduced and the stage of debate they have reached. News articles about the bill and what is being said in debates, with those news articles being posted to a news feed on Parliament's website and included in a parliamentary e-bulletin issued regularly to the community. And video extracts of the parliamentary debates on a bill that are shared to, for example, a social media platform such as YouTube. To be effective communicators, Parliaments can tap into the array of digital tools and platforms available to them, giving the community the opportunity to be better informed about matters such as legislation being considered. In my view, it is not enough for Parliaments to rely on the media for public reporting on the work of Parliament. Instead, Parliaments have both the responsibility and means to communicate directly with the community about their work on matters such as legislation. But informing is probably the easy part of engagement. Interacting and involving the community is a more difficult task that requires more detailed thinking and planning. Opening up opportunities for people to have a say can help take Parliament's community engagement to the next level. Given the debate on legislation forms a significant portion of the parliamentary workload, if community members are not able to participate, then they remain simply outside observers to the matters that impact their lives. This can fuel a feeling of disconnect from politics that ultimately can impact the legitimacy of parliaments. One approach that parliaments can take is to refer more legislation to scrutiny by parliamentary committees, and for those committees to conduct public consultation processes that enable community input on the bill being examined, particularly its likely impact on the community. But rather than just using traditional submission and hearing processes, committees can broaden their information gathering by using surveys, polls, and forums to gauge public opinion on legislation. As mentioned earlier, some parliaments are using digital tools to enable public commentary on proposed legislation, with that commentary fed direct to MPs. Other possibilities could include actively using community impact statements on legislation as the basis for community consultations, including through social media surveys that ask community members to respond to the likely impacts of legislation. Adding non-government experts to the membership of parliamentary committees to contribute to detailed scrutiny of legislation. Establishing community advisory panels that can be used for consultations on bills before Parliament. Conducting public forums to explain legislation and seek feedback from the community. Having interactive hearings and roundtables on legislation, where community members are able to submit questions via the committee to be asked of witnesses discussing the proposed bill. Implementing more interactive processes that give the community a chance to be involved in consideration of legislation can provide a drawcard for the public to take more interest in Parliament. It's important to recognise that establishing any new or modified processes for community engagement would require capacity building for the community, MPs and staff. Capacity building programs for the community are an essential but perhaps underutilised aspect of public engagement. The focus needs to be not only on helping people understand the way Parliament works and the issues that Parliament is considering, but also the ways in which community members can participate and contribute their views. Such capacity building can occur through workshops, forums, and interactive resources. The Global Report also points out that professional development for MPs and staff is an essential part of better engagement. That can include capacity building or training in digital tools for effective engagement, media relations, including preparation of media plans, drafting of media releases and media interview skills, effective use of social media, public presentation skills, speech writing, community consultation processes, awareness training for engagement with diverse communities, including communities from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, people with disability, and youth. And here I would say that parliaments have a special responsibility to involve young people in their deliberations, because the youth of today will be the ones who are affected by the decisions that parliaments are making now for the future. Young people are keen to be taken seriously and to get a seat at the table. A commencement point for that can be having a youth charter developed in collaboration with young people to outline Parliament's commitment to engaging with young people and setting down what that would look like.
2 minutes more, please.
Thank you. By engaging with young people through innovative interactive processes that enable them to share their views with decision makers and contribute to legislative outcomes, parliaments are making a worthwhile investment for the future well-being of the community. A useful aspect of the Global Parliamentary Report is that it provides many examples of practices that parliaments around the world are now adopting to take their community engagement to the next level. Those case studies can assist parliaments looking for ideas that have been tested in real-world situations. It's important to recognise that better engagement cannot be achieved overnight. So think big and do small. In order to have a modern engagement approach, it's helpful to develop a strategy that's ambitious and forward-looking, but to ensure that it can be implemented step by step, to build confidence, to learn along the way, and to keep striving for a more connected future. Bring the community along with you by collaborating with civil society organisations and community members who have expertise and specialist knowledge of engagement. And these are the final points I'll make. As the global report points out, engagement shifts to a new level when parliaments collaborate with the community, working together to achieve mutually beneficial outcomes. This can also lead to co-creation that embeds the community in decision-making processes so that solutions are designed with people instead of for them. Collaboration can also allow parliaments to access expertise and community members to interact with decision makers. Limited resources can be used more efficiently, with parliaments and external partners setting up joint engagement initiatives rather than going it alone. I look forward to our discussion to come over the course of today's webinar, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andres Lomp. And participants, I'm sure you join me in commending a very well thought out presentation, telling us that public participation is mutually beneficial to Parliament as well as to the society at large, that we must think big and do small, that parliaments are forums for dialogue and engagement. Keep the questions coming. I would now like to invite our discussant, our first discussant. We have two discussants, so let me take the opportunity to invite our first discussant. This is the Honorable John Kiarie, Member of Parliament from the Parliament of Kenya. Before I do so, allow me to recognize we have been joined on this webinar by the Honorable Ramadan Shembesh, Member of Parliament from Libya. So just allow me to recognize a Member of Parliament, Honorable Ramadan Shembesh, MP from the Parliament of Libya. The Honorable John Kiarie, our discussant, has accumulated a wealth of experience and expertise in the field of communications, information, and innovation, showcased through his dynamic roles as a second-term Member of Parliament. The turnover in our Parliament is very high. So when you see a second-term member, that's a person deserving of respect. So second-term Member of Parliament for Dagoret South constituency. He's also the chairperson of the Communications, Information and Innovation Committee in the National Assembly of the Parliament of Kenya. With a background in education, communications, and community development, and a firm belief in the integration of arts and sciences, the Honorable John Kiarie, or KJ, as is popularly known in this country, KJ, embodies a unique perspective that transcends the traditional boundaries. Additionally, as a journalist and media journalist, KJ has made significant contributions in strategic communications, political communications, and advertising, working with esteemed local, regional, and international clients and brands. His portfolio includes award-winning campaigns in brand development, community development communications, and behavior change campaigns, reflecting his dedication in impactful messaging and creative storytelling. With a solid foundation in fine arts, information technology, and communication studies, KJ's diverse skill set encompasses creative direction, copywriting, visual and performing arts, and brand development, making him a versatile and innovative professional. His passion for youth mentorship, environmental conservation, and driving positive change through technology and the arts underscores his commitment to fostering a more connected and inclusive society. Please join me in welcoming a truly outstanding individual. The floor is yours, the Honorable KJ. You have 10 minutes. With 2 minutes left, I will alert you. KJ, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and it's a great honor to be here this afternoon. Of course, the Center for Parliamentary Training is darling in our Kenyan Parliament, but even more so, I'm very honored to be joining the IPU community, and it's a great honor to be a discussant today on this topic on public participation in Parliament and its impact on parliamentary democracy. We can go to the next slide. In our discussion, and as a way of introduction, you will find that public participation has a very big element that connects it to communication. In the same way that we say that communication has not happened until the communication has been received by the receiver and understood, I want to imagine that public participation is in the same way, whereby it is a two-way process that incorporates public concerns into decision-making. But this has to be a loop. The loop has to begin from the sender of the message, who is normally the director of the message. And this goes through conduits and channels and ultimately gets to the receiver. And even in this process of a two-way process of communication, you will find that there could be many other things that come into play, up to and including noise. And in this case, the noise could be coming from the channels that are being used. It could be coming from the host itself or the messenger themselves, or the noise could even be coming from the receiver, so that the process of public participation has to be seen as a loop. So we may call it a two-way process, but it is a two-way process that has a feedback loop back to the messenger, and the messenger is able to assess whether the participation has been meaningful and whether it has been complete. Now, in our view as parliamentarians, we find that public participation becomes important as a vital element in addressing the governance's challenges and ensuring that there is responsive legislation. In Kenya, the right to public participation has been protected in our constitution, which is our highest document of law, in Article 10, 118, and 119. These are articles in our constitution that emphasize the role of public engagement in governance. Okay. Now, public participation matters to us, especially we who are in Parliament. Every time I walk into our chamber, the Kenyan National Assembly, there is a big banner at the entrance to our chambers. And this banner says why we exist and what we do as parliamentarians. The banner reads that we are there for the welfare of society and the just government of the people. And for us to be able to be there for the welfare of society and the just government of the people, we would need for that person to be central to the decisions that we are making in Parliament. And as such, it is for democratic governance, public participation becomes central so that we can have an informed, engaged, and empowered citizenry. There are obligations that come with public participation, and these are that with public participation, we're able to promote a culture of engagement. We're able to guide parliamentary focus so that Parliament is speaking the language of the people that they represent. Public participation also promotes inclusivity and innovation, and to my mind, it also improves responsiveness. Now, in Kenya, we are in the middle of so much at the moment, and most of it has to do with our idea on public participation. And we are learning that there are very many forms of public participation, and I'll just talk about key among them, which is information sharing. And for parliaments, you find that Parliament has so many activities, up to and including the chamber processes, the processes in committee, the members of Parliament in their constituencies, doing the clinics with their people, doing the development projects and so on. So these parliamentary activities can become accessible through public participation. There's education. We last year had an incident in the Kenya Parliament where there was so much misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, and even fake news about the finance bill. And we realized that most of the issues that were being canvassed, especially the misinformation, had to do with a lack of enough education. And as such, public participation allows for the process of understanding to be empowered. There's also communication, which is a form of public participation, where we are able to foster mutual understanding through dialogue. And there's also consultation and participation, which means if it is Parliament conducting public participation, stepping down from the high pedestal of parliamentary processes and coming down to where the people are and ensuring that decisions are being made at that level. Let's go. Now, with public participation, what we are learning in Kenya and from the Kenya Parliament is that public participation has an impact on legislation and governance. It incorporates diverse perspectives for more effective laws and lawmaking. It increases the visibility and reduces the abuse. It also leads to more involvements and leads to smoother implementations and greater compliance, giving more legitimacy and trust to the body of Parliament. The Kenya Parliament is learning that public participation is easier said than done. This is because it comes with great challenges. These challenges could be low awareness, and low awareness could be low awareness for the events of public participation, but it also could be low awareness for the issues being canvassed at the public participation fora. There's also institutional resistance. Parliaments themselves are not very open to change. And when a new idea on public participation comes up, the first resistance is institutional, and it could even be coming from Parliament. But as I said, there could be noise from all other levels. It could be from other stakeholders, it could be from the receivers, it could be from the channels that are being used, and so on. There are also socioeconomic disparities and also understanding disparities, that the level of understanding is so diverse because you're dealing with the whole entire universal suffrage when you come into public participation. And so socioeconomic disparities come to play. And also, to conduct a meaningful, robust public participation, you need to resource that. And so resource constraints are also challenges to public participation, as we are learning in Kenya. So very quickly, the Kenyan Parliament has made efforts towards better, more robust public participation. And some of the efforts that the Kenya Parliament has put out is inviting the public to input on legislative business. And this can be done even through public memoranda. Like last week, the committee that I chair, we were vetting a PS or a principal secretary for office. And we received memoranda from public. And this is through invitation from the Kenya Parliament. And this memoranda comes to us. The Kenya Parliament is also working on a public participation bill so that we finally are able to define and institutionalize citizen engagement, even for legislation and legislative activities. The Kenya Parliament also conducts platforms for dialogue between legislators, civil society, citizens, and other stakeholders on an annual national symposium, which is becoming an item on the calendar for the Kenya Parliament every year. So in strengthening legislation for enhanced governance, there is a place for guaranteeing the rights to public participation. In Kenya, the right to public participation is guaranteed in the Constitution and other subordinate laws, and even the new laws that we shall be making. So there is a need for legal frameworks so that we're able to strengthen public participation. There's a need to enhance civic education and skills for effective participation. And that is capacity building, yes. And yes, and we are seeing a great opportunity, especially through the committee that I chair, the Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation, for technology use in public participation, and as such, being able to broaden participation through digital platforms and all these other new emerging platforms. There's also the issue of institutionalizing engagement, where we ensure participation is meaningful and inclusive. On to the final slide, kindly. Finally, I think the observation coming from the keynote speaker and even from the participation and bills that I'm giving is that public participation is key to a resilient and responsive democracy. However, it is not a one-off event. It is an ongoing process. And as I said, it is a loop of communication where the message comes from the messenger to the receiver, and there's a feedback loop, and this feedback loop is continuous and it's an ongoing process. Ultimately, with public participation, parliaments will be able to become more trusted, citizen-centered institutions that reflect public needs and govern justly, just as the mantra for the Kenya Parliament says, that we exist and we work and we perform for the welfare of society and the just government of the people. I thank you, and I shall be looking forward to an engagement in the plenary. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable KJ, for a very erudite presentation. You remind us that public participation matters, that the people are central to why parliaments exist, that public participation is a two-way process. It is not an event, it is a process. We must foster a culture of citizen engagement. Thank you very much. Keep the questions coming. The questions are coming in fast and furious. Keep them coming. Allow me now to invite and to introduce the next discussant. But before I do so, let me recognize on the platform, we have been joined by the clerk of the Senate of the Kingdom of Lesotho, the Seliso Molise, clerk of the Senate. So like to recognize my colleague from the Senate of Lesotho. Our second discussant, our final discussant, is Dr. Mohamed Amali, Senior Research Fellow. Dr. Mohamed Amali was called to the Nigerian bar as a barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria in 2005. Dr. Amali holds a master's degree in international law and a PhD in international criminal law, both from the University of Huddersfield in the United Kingdom. Currently, Dr. Amali is a senior research fellow at the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, which is a capacity building body of the Nigerian National Assembly. Let's welcome Dr. Amali. Dr. Amali, you have 10 minutes to share your reflections on this subject. And with 2 minutes left to the end of that time, I will alert you. The floor is yours, sir. Proceed.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. I'm privileged to be on this platform. I am so happy to be here. The lead discussant and the lead presenter and this first discussant have said a lot about public participation already. I'm not going to dwell into that for the purposes of time so that we don't repeat ourselves. But I'm going to speak from the Nigerian perspective. And public participation is, like they all say, key to governance. And in Nigeria, right from the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, public participation is entrenched there, representation first. So Nigeria is a country that has 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. For the purposes of representation, each of those 36 states have 3 senators, to represent them on the principle of equality of states. Now we have 2 chambers. We have our National Assembly is the House of Representatives and the Senate. So it's a bicameral legislature. So in the House of Representatives, we have 360 members. In the Senate, we have 109. The reason we have more members in the House of Representatives is because it is based on the principle of representation. So in a state that has much more population, they have more members representing them so that they are well represented. So if you have a state that has only 1 million people and you give them the same number of representation with a state that has 10 million people, one state will be overrepresented, another will be underrepresented. So based on population, we make all those, the Constitution recognizes that some states are more populated than the others, so they have more representation. So that's on the basis of representation. Now, talking about public participation, when we get into the parliamentary, into the parliament and how we pass our bills, everything at the second stage of a bill process, we have the committee. When the bills are recommended to the committee, we have what we call a public hearing. The public hearing now invites stakeholders, on the subject matter of the particular bill. And the stakeholders come in on a particular day and ventilate their views and articulate their points on what the need or what they want to say about that bill. For instance, when we're talking about the electoral law, like I serve on the Joint Senate and House of Reps Committee on Electoral Matters, and when we organize public hearings, people from all walks of life turn up. The albino community will turn up and tell us that during elections, because of the sun, they can't see well in the sun. Let's provide shade. The visually impaired will come and say we should provide brailles as a means of voting. So we articulate and aggregate all those points in the process of enacting or the electoral law. So that public participation is there. And that, like the lead speaker said, the lead speaker talked about a lot of things and a lot of recommendations. And I was listening attentively. And many of the things he said there are things we already do in Nigeria. Unfortunately, there is a bit of mistrust between the public and what the people there do. So he was talking about capacity building for the public as well, which I think is a very good point. But even when we organize public hearings, for instance, there is a bit of apathy, because of that level of mistrust. And I don't know how we're going to fix it. It has nothing to do with this subject. Maybe that has to do more with governance and social security. The people do not trust that even if I participate in this dialogue, it's going to have any effect. You understand? But be that as it may, the process is there. We invite the public to come and ventilate their views and let us know exactly what they want, and we try to put it into the laws. Now, one major issue about this public participation that has cropped up in Nigeria previously, like in constitution alteration bills, for example, when we want to alter the constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, we need, of the 36 states that I mentioned earlier, we need two-thirds majority of all those states to agree to that bill, to the alteration we want to make. So the Constitution Alteration Committee usually goes round the whole country to aggregate and gauge the views of the public from all the states and tell them, desensitize them. This is what we want to do in the next constitutional alteration exercise. We want to include A, B, C, and then the public gives their input through the houses of assembly in those states. Now, when they get it all together and they get the constitutional requirements of two-thirds majority of the 36 states, they now present the bill for the assent of the president, which is a constitutional precedent in our constitution that all bills must be assented to by the president. Now, in 2011 during the regime of former President Goodluck Jonathan, we had a peculiar incident where the National Assembly wanted to jettison the assent of the president because the section of the Constitution of Nigeria that actually talks about constitution alteration does not specifically say that the president must assent. However, Section 58 of the Constitution that talks about bills says that every bill must be assented to by the president. So what the National Assembly was saying was that the section that talked about constitutional alteration did not say we need the president's assent. But what the president was saying is that since all constitutional alterations come through bills, it means we have a recourse to Section 58. You need my signature. But the National Assembly's argument was that this is a constitutional alteration bill that was decided by the whole country. One man who is the president, despite the fact that he's the president, should not jettison the views of majority of Nigerians. Because the constitution, the preamble to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria says, we the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria make this constitution as follows. That's what the preamble says. So it's the people's constitution. It's not the president's constitution. This is the argument that they were advancing. The matter went to court, and unfortunately, the courts did not adjudicate on it. They rather told them to go and settle it out of court. If not, we would have had a judicial decision in this regard, and it would have solved that lacuna. So I'm going to show it to the audience what they really think. Should the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria be able to jettison the views of millions of Nigerians just because he has the pen to refuse or decline assent to a bill? And so it slaps the face of public participation, because if we have gone around the whole country aggregating people's views and they have decided that they want to include something in the constitution and this is it, and the president for whatever reason decides against that, then it goes against all we are talking about public participation in parliament. Because I do not understand, you understand, why that should be. Again, like I said, it's a constitutional alteration exercise. So we need, maybe that is a lacuna in the constitution that we need to fix. But if the president is still the one assenting or declining assent to constitutional alteration bill, then that lacuna may not be fixed. So that's all I have to say from the Nigerian perspective about public participation, because everything that has been said, I tell you, on book is there. We do it, but we may not be getting the necessary results because, like I told you, the main thing is apathy and the level of mistrust we have between Nigerians and the system. If the average Nigerian on the street, sees a member of parliament, for example, or a member of the executive, the first reaction they have to them is they are doing nothing. And because I work with parliamentarians, that cannot be further away from the truth. They do a lot of work. I am not saying all of them are good, but they do a lot of work. But it's that public perception about them that is a real big problem. So when that public perception is not solved, then we have a big problem, including the public, in the participation of doing legislation, because we do not have enough of it. The procedure is there, the mechanisms are there, but we do not have enough of it in Nigeria. And I work at the National Institute for Legislative Studies, like the moderator said, and we are the capacity building body of the Nigerian legislators. So we do their bills, we draft bills, we advise them on technical issues. So from that end, we build the capacity of the legislators to do what they're supposed to do. Public participation on the end of sensitizing the public about how to engage in public participation, that is also done. You understand? The National Assembly has social media links where they articulate all bills. If you go to the House of Reps, House of Representatives, the Senate, on their Twitter page and everything, they will tell you this bill has gone through first reading, through second reading. All those things are there on the website. Everything is there. So there's perfection, near perfection, in the mechanisms. It is the implementation and the results we're getting from it now that may be an issue. I think that's all I have to say from this end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amali, and very interesting perspectives from the Nigerian experience, introducing a very interesting dimension. There are a lot of similarities from all the presenters, but also there are conceptual circumstances and unique circumstances. And you bring a very important point that we want to do all these things, we want to engage the public, but what about the challenge of apathy and lethargy and a perception by the public that governmental authorities are not to be trusted? They will not do anything about the views that we present to them. It will not matter. These views will not be presented. So why bother? Why take our time? You also bring out a very interesting perspective, and it will be good to hear the thoughts of the main presenter and the other discussant about doing away with the presidential assent for a constitutional amendment on the basis that public participation has brought forward a particular outcome, and that the president should have no authority or no prerogative to depart from what the public has decided. But of course, the question then is that constitution, which enacted a role for presidential assent, was a product of public participation. So maybe I would like to hear, will be happy to hear the thoughts of the main presenter and the discussant. I would like to recognize Mohit Pramanik from Partnerships for Maternal, Newborn and Child Healthcare from Geneva, who has joined us. We have now come to that part of our webinar where we have we will be inviting participants to put their questions, and we have received a number of questions. So I would like to read out these questions, and the participants, the discussants and the main presenter may take notes, and they will speak to them. We will also, I'll read out a few questions, and then we can allow one or two to vocalize, to actually ask their questions. and then we will invite our main presenter and the discussants to respond, and we will be done. We want to take 20 minutes in this session, so we are going up to about 4:18. So let me start in no particular order. We have a number of questions. Mr. Jackson Matheshe, how can we approach public participation in light of the recent evolving pronouncements of the Supreme Court? So I believe that can be considered by KJ. There have been onerous requirements for public participation. You will, I am sure you know, both qualitative and quantitative, making it almost impossible to meet the threshold that has been set. So that would be an interesting one for you to speak to. A question has been asked here, and this any of the our panelists can speak to, that legislative work and specifically lawmaking, legislation is often initiated from the executive branch. And when that happens, Parliament facilitates public engagement at the tail end when the bills are already in the legislature, so that the conceptual information from the executive, what informed the origination of the legislation by the executive before it came to the legislature, is not with the legislature. So the participant asks, what's your comment on the thinking that community engagement should therefore begin with the executive at the conceptual stage, so as to enhance better participation during the lawmaking at the legislature? So that this is not only the role of the legislature, but also that of the executive where it originates legislation. Another question, these questions have not been directed to any particular speaker. One participant says, great reflection from all the speakers. And the question the participant has put is, in your view, what is your assessment of the level of impact that citizens have on decision-making in the Parliament? So you could look at your different jurisdictions. And the question further goes, it seems we inform and consult mostly with government and interest groups. So an interesting dimension there, is there some club of a public participation club, so that Parliament is engaging mainly with governmental bodies and interest groups to placate citizens, but no real empowerment of citizens to change policy? So that's a question to any of the participants. Let's get someone on the floor, if we may. Somebody put up their hand, maybe someone from the floor, before I read the other questions. Our main presenter, yes, Mr. Andreas Lob.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to answer a couple of those questions. So in relation to the question about the executive being responsible for some of the community engagement beforehand, I think that is correct, in the sense that, I mean, legislation is a staged process. It goes through many stages. There's, I suppose, and it derives from many sources. I mean, it can derive from a sort of a government policy announcement that it makes at an election campaign, or so, and it can be done through community consultation or community information. But I think the role of Parliament is somewhat different in terms of the consultation that takes place, because when executive is forming legislation to present to Parliament, it's looking at what it wants to achieve from a policy perspective to implement its policies and the legislation that's needed to implement those policies. Parliament's role in that regard is more of scrutiny to make sure that the legislation, I suppose, is constitutional, or at least fits in the requirements of the legal framework of the country, but also is performs or will perform as it's intended to. So I think there's different roles for the executive and the Parliament in terms of community consultation on legislation. So I think because legislation is a staged process, there are different stages to the community consultation. Community consultation shouldn't just happen by one of the arms of government, either just the executive or just the parliament. My view is that it should happen at both stages of, because there are times when we're in Australia, we've experienced where through community consultation processes, the community's been able to inform the government, or the parliament's been able to inform the government of unintended consequences that weren't thought of when the legislation was first introduced. And that brings about legislative amendments or amendments to the proposed legislation. So I think that's a really important part of the community consultation that parliaments undertake, is to look at the impact that the legislation is going to have on the community after it's been introduced. And so often you won't see the full legislation until it is introduced. And so even though there might be community consultation by the executive to bring it to Parliament, Parliament then still has a role to look at the intended consequences. The other question I just wanted to respond to, and to sort of, is community engagement sort of, is there just a sort of a bias, I suppose, towards experts and sort of government agencies or larger bodies? And I think it's in terms of the type of consultation you undertake. And I don't think all consultation needs to be the same. And I think that's part of the issue that parliaments have faced, is that they tend to do one form of consultation, which is the traditional hearing processes where people have to put in a submission and then they get invited to a hearing, and there's parliamentarians on one side of the table and community members or organisations on the other, and it's sort of a very formal process. And I think what's happening now that I'm seeing around the world is a lot of parliaments are looking at ways in which the processes can be less formal. So, sometimes it's about asking the community questions that they need to answer in relation to a specific issue, because they may not be experts on a particular issue, but they may have opinions. Sometimes it's offering the opportunity for the community to share comments about a particular issue being investigated by a parliamentary committee or legislation. And that commentary can help committees or help parliamentarians see the level of interest that the community has in a particular issue, or the level of concern that the community has in the issue, and they can bring that level of concern to the debates that happen in the chamber. So I think if parliaments just follow one type of consultation, which is the formal consultation method, then you will see the community disengage, because they may not be expert in the issues being considered, but they may still have opinions on it, or they may still have commentary on it. And I think introducing some less formal processes for Parliament can, I think, assist with that community participation rather than just relying on experts and agencies. Those just two comments I want to make.
Dr. Amalia, I see your hand up very briefly. Would you like to intervene? Yes.
Yes, just on the question about the executive not engaging at the community level before the laws are processed. By the doctrine of separation of powers, the legislature has its law, like the lead speaker just said, the executive has it. So if we're going to start lumping or burdening the executive again with engagement with the community, then it's going to make the process of lawmaking even more cumbersome, and the process of governance even more cumbersome. So it's still better, it goes from the executive to the legislative arm. The legislative arm engages the community. That's why they're there. They're representatives of the people. They do the public hearings and all those things and engage. So there will be no need, really. And let's not forget that the community on its own can initiate bills. They mustn't wait for the executive. Through pressure groups, through groups, they can initiate bills, take to their members of parliament and say, listen, we need this, and so. So let's not burden the executive with any lawmaking people communicating with the community. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, KJ. Honorable KJ, a brief intervention on this.
Thank you very much, our clerk of the Senate, Bwana Nyegenye. And even from this discussion, from the presentation by our keynote speaker and from the discussants, you can tell that public participation as a concept is bringing together so many moving parts that even as we interrogate what is the way forward for public participation, we might be able to just define the basic variables. And to my mind, there is what needs to get done, which is the issue. There is a player who is Parliament in this case, and there is also another player who is the public and other stakeholders. And to my mind, the supporting variables to that are about either ownership or buying. So that if you're going into a public participation effort, you have to question, are you going into it as a parliament so that you can get buy-in for what you already believe is good? Or are you going to get ownership from the person who should actually be owning this? Because that now speaks to what Mohammed Amali is talking about. Is this going to be a property of the executive? Is it going to be owned by parliament? But to my mind, public participation is happening because the issues are not parliamentary issues. They're not executive issues. It is taking back these issues to the populace, the people themselves. And to your discussion, Mohammed, Nigeria is very like Kenya, where our first article of the Constitution declares that the power belongs to the people, that anybody else who is wielding power at any point, whether the executive or parliament, are wielding it in trust for the people. And as such, to my mind then, public participation is not about parliament going out to get buy-in on a matter that they have already agreed on. Public participation should be to generate core ownership of the issue, because parliament then would be acting on behalf of its people and in trust of the people. But there is a big question that has come up, and I even saw it on the charts, is about the level of understanding for all the players. We say the variables are too many and they're moving. And to even address that, we'd have to go back to the whole conversation why we are here. We are here because we want to support parliaments, and we want to support parliaments because parliaments are about democracy. Why are we supporting democracy? It's because we know in the absence of democracy, anything else so far has proven not to be effective, because at times anarchy could be an option, but a very expensive option where you do not have the structures that Dr. Mali is talking about. The executive is a structure, parliament is a structure, and people have bequeathed these to themselves. And you could imagine even as far back as Plato, when he's speaking through Socrates on the issue of the republic, he brings up this issue of how well informed should one be before they undertake public affairs. And to Plato's mind, he was of the idea that leadership should be the preserve and exclusively for people who are knowledgeable. So now in this day and age, where there is a proliferation of information, a proliferation of media, a proliferation of truths, and I dare say this because some time back, humanity shared the truth, republics shared the truth, but today, every individual seems to be having their own version of the truth. Then it begs the question, when you go into public participation, what is the level of understanding and how big are the disparities? Is it a homogeneous conversation with people who understand all these things to the same level? Or is it a very disjointed, cacophonious conversation? And that brings us then to the means. And that's where I would want to end and say that the biggest opportunity that exists is that even with that proliferation that is leading to all this misinformation, disinformation, there lies in an opportunity where parliaments can innovatively utilize this emerging technology to go beyond the traditional forms of public participation that Andres is talking about, where it is a meeting, a formal meeting. In Kenya, it's called a baraza, where you're formally invited by leadership and you make a contribution around a table. Today, public participation could happen way before it even is formalized. You know, it could even happen in WhatsApp groups. It could happen in blasts that are sent out through social media. It could happen through innovative ways of getting space on already existing platforms like news and other forms of media. And as such, then, you're able to now work with the variables in a place where it's a controlled environment, because the absence of a controlled environment will lead to chaos, will lead to cacophony, because opinions are as many as the people who will be participating in the public participation. So there's still a place for structure in public participation.
Thank you very much. We want to hear some participants on the floor participating publicly. Mr. Peter, pardon me, Emwa or Emoir, hand was up. Mr. Peter Emwa or Emoir, if you could ask your question, please. And
thank you.
When you have the chance, you could indicate who you are putting the question to. Also, you could indicate where you are hailing from.
Okay, thank you, moderator. Yes, my name is Peter Emoit. Sorry for that typo there, is Emoit. And I'm from the University of Nairobi, a PhD student. And mine is just an addition to Mr. Andre and Honorable KJ. And my addition is on the use of the digital space. And what should be added there is the use of Google Forms or QR codes. Now people are very digital, and these QR forms and Google Forms will help avoid the bias that people normally have. Why? Because you can do it from your room, the comfort of your room, without going to the public participation hall or allocated hall. Secondly, they are cost effective. You need not to buy space in the newspaper, or in one of the media houses. Then they are also time saving. And lastly, it will help the parliamentary research teams to analyze and generate qualitative and quantitative data. And this now will make it easy on what Mr. Andre said, to publish what the public participation was all about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So please take note, main presenter and the discussants, you will come to respond. Let me place a few more, let me read a few more questions that have come in from the participants. A question from Mr. Edward Kakumu. The question is, how will Parliament measure the responsiveness of the public? How does Parliament determine that the public has been responsive in the public participation? So take a note. Then a very interesting question from Mr. David Githaga, and which this perhaps the Global South will identify more with this question. But the question is, how do you mitigate on the issue of facilitation and where participants expect to be compensated for attending public fora? So this may resonate more with us in the Global South, that participants argue that they have left their work, that they need to be compensated for transport to the venue, they need to be compensated for their time, they probably expect to be provided with food and refreshment. So how do you address this? So that's a question again, but our panel will respond to. Then we have a question from Mr. Gideon Kipruto, asking the panel to comment on the need to balance between representing the people's voices and the administration's agenda. That every administration that comes into, that takes government has an agenda, and is there a danger that public participation could again veer away from the agenda that the administration has? The other question for you panelists is, how do you propose that Parliament should deal with the trust deficit You all have spoken about the challenge of the trust deficit in the public. How do you propose that the public could, parliaments could mitigate against that deficit? So maybe 2 minutes each to our panel. Let's start with KJ, if you are ready, 2 minutes each, then Dr. Amali, and then Mr. Lomp. And meantime, we will be taking in more questions. KJ, the floor is yours. Speak to any of this.
I think for most of them, something amazing has come up in the comments. And if I could get it, where one of the participants said that one of the biggest things that has ailed the perception on public participation is the idea that it is an event. To imagine that public participation is an event in itself so faulty that it could now lead to all these other things that we're talking about, up to and including the issue of looking for facilitation to attend events and so on. And it also boils down again to ownership, to whose work is being done in public participation. If a stakeholder thinks that this is being done for the benefit of the legislator or the executive, then they see it not as their work to undertake it. So the big challenge here is the question of what form shall public participation take in this day and age? And we are being told that this public participation has to take advantage of all the advancements, whether these advancements are in technology and so on, because public participation becomes so difficult. And that speaks to why the questions being asked about the process of coming to a perfect public participation law. We've got to remind ourselves that the process of public participation is so multidisciplinary that you might not want to even attempt to capture all of it in a 1 hour webinar. Because when you think about public participation, there is an element of governance there. There's an element of psychology. There's an element of communication, even event planning and so on. So it's such a wide topic to be covered in such a short time. But ultimately, what I would like to say is that nobody has cracked it to perfection. And probably the finest way to walk into this is by trial and error, to see what works for what issues, what works for what parliament, what works for what context, and what works for what time. Because then you will not be having a one-size-fits-all solution, which is a hypodermic needle that we would now put in a bottle and be able to sell to everybody. So I think public participation is an ongoing process, but it is also very, very contextual. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Mali, in 2 minutes, your intervention on this.
Okay. Yeah, I want to intervene on two questions that were raised. One was how do we address the issue of apathy, and then how do we gauge the level of participation? Now, just like the CPS there in Kenya, we have the National Institute for Legislative Studies here. America has the Congressional Research Services. Parliament must have these kind of bodies, you understand, that are going to be manned by experts, manned by research fellows who are going to be the ones that will be able to do empirical research on those kind of things. When you do empirical research, you can now gauge the level of public participation and say that. Like in Nigeria, where I talked about the constitution, say constitutional alteration bills that have to go to two-third majority of the states, then it goes to two-third majority, but it's still members of parliament that vote. It's still not the public. It's still members of parliament in those state houses of assembly that vote. So the members of parliament could go and do what they want to do that does not reflect the wills of the people. We have constitutional checks for those kind of things. If the people have done what you do not think they are doing for your interest, you can recall them. The process of recall in Nigeria is cumbersome. We do not have the political will in Nigeria to recall erring legislators. So those kind of things all happen. And then another one about the apathy towards the perception of how do we change the perception. That has to do not much with what we're talking about here. It's about a social security system problem. It's a social security problem. In Nigeria, for example, you can meet somebody that had nothing and he becomes a member of parliament or he becomes a minister, and he's sending people abroad all of a sudden on scholarship. You see? So that overnight grace to grass or grass to grace, when people see that, they think you only go there to go and dip your hand in the national cake. So as long as our social security system is not in place, where the gap between the rich and the poor is that wide, we will not be able to cure this level of apathy towards what we talk about public participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lomp. In 2 minutes, we are coming to the close of this. We will have one or two other questions, and we will ask the panelists to make their closing submissions. So before that, Mr. Lomp, perhaps any intervention on the questions already asked. Floor is yours, 2 minutes.
Thank you. I think one of the issues, a fundamental issue, is that often when parliaments do consultation, it's done individually. So you talk to an individual agency or you talk to an individual person. And I think Honourable KJ was talking about co-ownership. And I think if we move towards more collaborative practices where people in a room are sharing their experiences, not just with parliamentarians, but with each other and coming to common solutions, I think that can help that idea that it's just an individual experience that is actually a shared experience that we are part of, that we're co-owning. I think the other thing that I've noticed is that often you'll get information from a parliament about the beginning of a process, a consultation process, calling for submissions, and then you'll get the report at the end. But there's not a lot of information coming out about what people are saying, what people are discussing. And I would like to see parliaments, and certainly it's something that in my own parliament we've been working on, is to try and share more information, give a profile to some of the voices that are in the community, particularly voices that aren't often heard in parliaments. We've all got websites and social media feeds, but we shouldn't use them just as notice boards for information that we want to put out to the community. I think you build public confidence and trust when you share information to other members of the community about what community has been telling you in Parliament, because then people see that, yes, Parliament has been listening to these people. Ultimately, the government may not decide it doesn't want to listen or doesn't want to adopt the recommendations made by Parliament, but at least Parliament is showing to people that, yes, we listened to you at the hearing, and this is the sort of views that we're getting in, and it keeps that dialogue going. So I think that's two ways, I would say: more collaborative processes where people are together to come up with discussion and solutions, and sharing information that comes out of the hearings, the process, rather than just talking about the process itself.
Thank you very much. So we have run out of our time. So in the remaining time, I think we will ask the panelists in 3 minutes or so each to give any closing thoughts, and then we will come to the end of our webinar for today. So your closing thoughts, KJ?
It is to first say that this was an amazing experience. What a webinar, and great work to the promoters of this event today. To have 151 people tune in on a random Monday afternoon, that's some great effort. I'm also greatly honored to have been a discussant in this conversation this afternoon. To my closing remarks is to say that on my part, I've taken out some insights that are helpful at a time when Kenya is working on preparing a public participation bill. In September of last year, we forwarded the public participation bill to the Attorney General for his consideration. It is a public participation bill, and it will be going for public participation at very many stages. And the process of this bill will even in itself be informing its formation, even as it's being formed. So a public participation bill having to go through all the processes provided for public participation in Kenya, the constitutional ones, the legal ones. And you can imagine the expectations from both sides. Parliament has its expectations, the people have their expectation. And I would imagine that the only way to do this and get it right is to make it part of legislation so that every single act in Parliament, every single effort, every single bill, every single motion has its opportunities for public participation. Because as we do it, the more we are doing it, the more we are learning, and the more we are setting precedences that could be case studies even going forward. All this is being done because we are looking for a place to support the democratic processes and to support democracy. Because as we speak today, as a people, as humanity, we know that in the absence of democracy, maybe the other alternatives are something unimaginable. I probably would not put it better than Winston Churchill, the great one, who once said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. You know, the world has tried to make other forms of human governance of human issues and ended up regretting it. We have the democracy that we need to protect at a very volatile time when each and every opinion is holding the same weight. And that makes public participation all the more interesting, because unlike in the past, when voices could be suppressed because of channels, because of platforms, today every single stakeholder has an equal voice, thanks to the proliferation of media and proliferation of the platforms. It's been a great honor for the Kenya Parliament to be part of this, and looking forward to be part of many other webinars. Again, great to see our IPU team. It's great to reconnect, even though on a webinar. I thank you and bye.
Thank you very much, KJ. Andres, your closing thoughts in 2 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and thank you to all the participants and the co-panel here. It was a very enjoyable experience. And thank you for the moderation as well. The things I would say, I suppose, are public participation is always a work in progress, and it needs to be worked at diligently and constantly. And we need to keep up with the times and need to modernise our public engagement. And that's something that's responsibility of both members of Parliament and parliamentary administrations. Earlier on today, we heard about the fact that sometimes parliamentary administrations can provide roadblocks because of their concerns about moving too fast or moving. But I think it's really important that we don't see those roadblocks, that we encourage different forms of public participation. Taking up some of the points that the speakers have made today and the questions, is that not all processes can be the same. There are different issues that require different processes. There are different community sectors that require different processes. And so public participation has also got to be flexible. It can't be just one type of participation. And I think that's the movement that I'm seeing around parliaments around the world, is that parliaments around the world are looking at new opportunities to engage their communities. And the final point I just want to make is that public participation is really worth it, because I think the joy of seeing the community participate in parliamentary activities, parliamentary programs, particularly young people who get the opportunity to share their voices with decision makers, I think that's what we should all reflect on, is that joy that we get from being part of a democratic system and encouraging public participation. Because if you look around the world and you look at those countries in which there is no democracy or limited democracy, I don't think you see much joy there. You do see it in the systems that we have, where we promote public participation in various forms. And I just encourage people to look at the IPU report and the UNDP report for examples about ways in which parliaments are modernising and reaching out increasingly through different methodologies to increase their public participation. But thank you for participation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amali. Your closing thoughts in 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. I will start by thanking you for a very beautiful moderated session. You did it like you were born to do it. So thank you very much for that. And then I also want to thank Professor Kamau. I met Professor Kamau in McGill last year, and then we have connected ever since. I'm very, very privileged, to be here. And thank you to Faith. Faith has been a very wonderful moderator on the outside, and so I want to thank her too. And Honorable KJ, thank you for your insights, and Andres as well. Honorable KJ, I leave here with a very important takeaway. The public participation bill that you just spoke about. I assure you that you will hear very soon that Nigeria is going to be moving a public participation bill too, and I got that from here. So it has been a wonderful experience, and I leave here with that takeaway. Thank you very much for everybody that has been here. It's been wonderful, and I hope to be on such panels again very soon. Cheers.
Thank you very much. So allow me, participants, to thank all the panelists on all our behalf. They have done a tremendous job. We live here with very important thoughts about public participation and its central place in our democratic systems of governance. It is not a choice, it's an imperative. Our countries belong to the people, and they must participate. They must make a determination about their destiny. Let me use the opportunity also to thank all the participants. There has been an overwhelming participation. Thank you for all your questions. Sorry about those we were not able to read, but the bottom line is that the dialogue continues. Public participation is not an event, it is a process, it's an ongoing process of the democratic process. So I want to thank you. I feel honored, I feel privileged to have been accorded the opportunity to serve as a moderator. Thank you. Let me hand over to Professor Nyokabi Kamau to bid us farewell. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you again in another webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Our moderator, you've been thanked by the panelists, and I'm sure the participants have appreciated how you've handled this so well. We thank you very much. We thank you, our presenters, all of you. Andres, KJ, Mohammed, all of you prepared, you thought through, you took this seriously as it deserves. You may want to note that at the peak of the hour, we had 156 participants. I want to thank them in a very special way and mention the countries that were represented here. We had Kenya, South Africa, DR Congo, Australia, Slovakia, Switzerland, Lithuania, Jordan, UK, Greece, Uganda, Luxembourg, Maldives, Ghana, Rwanda, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Bahrain, Italy, Gabon, Israel, Lebanon, and Lesotho. We had so many people it was really an IPU event. And for that reason, it was really interparliamentary. I just want to also thank the team that prepared. Jonathan Lang, thank you very much with your team. Please thank for us, Nora. Babik, in case she's not on the platform. I want to thank our webinar committee here, led by Mr. Wino. Faith and Co, you really did well in planning for this. I want to thank all our colleagues from the Parliament of Kenya who are here. There's a huge attendance from Kenya. I thank you all for supporting this, for supporting CPST. There's one issue, clerk, moderator, that has come up, the last one question here on civic education and how we probably need, because there was a question of, can the public participate on issues that they are not fully educated on? So civic education is an area where the question is, what can Parliament do to actually make sure people are properly aware of the issues that are coming for them to participate? With that, I want to really thank you all, and we're looking forward to more webinar series with the IPU and with other partners. Thank you very much. Have a good night, good afternoon, and the rest of the day for those of you in Geneva. Asanteni sana. God bless you all. That marks the end of our webinar. We can leave at our own pleasure. Thank you.